Hey, what's up everyone? This is Derrick with the Conscious Resistance Network. Today I want to talk about a new way to use the concept of freedom cells. For those who are new to this idea, please check out freedomcells.org. That's CELLS, cells.org, and you can find a whole playlist of videos that I've done about this topic. You can also check out on the Conscious Resistance YouTube channel, there's a playlist about freedom cells. But briefly, freedom cells are peer-to-peer decentralized groups that form for the purpose of voluntary association, mutual aid, skill sharing, knowledge sharing, preparedness, defense. Essentially, it's an unlimited potential with this concept. I've written about it in my latest book, Manifesto of the Free Humans, which you can download for free at theconsciousresistance.com/books. Now, in the past, I've talked about freedom cells applied to Standing Rock. I've talked about freedom cells applied to community defense, the idea of defending ourselves against violent criminals, be they police officers, IRS agents, ICE agents, common street thugs, otherwise. Today we're going to talk about freedom cells and how this can be applied to weather emergencies. Now, I'm filming this in late August 2017, when we are dealing with Tropical Storm Hurricane Harvey down here in Houston where I'm at. And I just came back from doing the Decentralize Your Life tour, and on the tour I've been talking to people about freedom cells. And when I'm explaining this concept, I've noticed that sometimes people tend to maybe shy away from the idea because it sounds like we're talking about, the end of the world scenario. I'm talking about getting prepared with your friends, and when people talk about prepping, they think of doomsday preppers or something they've seen in the media, and this negative image often comes to mind. But I'm trying to get people to see that prepping in different ways it should be standard practice, and it's something that our ancestors have done for generations. And one of the examples I use is the weather, and specifically saying that, hey, in Houston, we have hurricanes sometimes, and we have to be prepared for that. And people we've seen on the road dealing with landslides, fires, earthquakes, tornadoes, blizzards, you name it, every type of weather situation, people in the U.S. are dealing with different things. So it can be a weather emergency, it can be an economic collapse, it can be martial law, it can be zombie apocalypse or alien invasion, what have you. The idea is that you have an emergency. How are you going to deal with that? How is your family going to deal with that? Is your community going to deal with that? And this is something that, by taking the time to organize ahead of time as a freedom cell with your group of 7 to 9 people, 8 ideally, or even if you've got less than that, whatever you've got to start with, that your group starts thinking about these ideas. So when it comes to a hurricane, it's going to be obviously different for every situation that you're dealing with. A hurricane differs from what to do with a fire, but in some instances, the answers are all the same. And I want to start by first saying you want to be prepared for these different emergencies. So depending on your climate, your region, you know what kind of weather, environmental disasters that you are at risk for. Be that wildfires, blizzards, mudslides, avalanches, what have you. Whatever it is, you know how to best deal with that. So think about this ahead of time. Don't wait until it happens, and think about how you can be prepared for that situation. And maybe in some of these instances, if there's a wildfire, you usually get the heck away, right? So that's going to be different than if you want to just stay put when dealing with a hurricane or something like that. But overall, the goal is to be as prepared as possible, to think ahead and to plan ahead. Now, the tools I'm going to offer today are, I think, useful in different situations, but I'm going to be applying them more specifically to the hurricane today, but I think you will understand how they can be applied in different ways. So let's say a weather emergency, environmental disaster is taking place. A wildfire is broken out, you hear there's a landslide. It's something where you are dealing with hazardous conditions, right? Well, the first step, I think, is going to be for, as I said, your freedom cell to be prepared and to have planned ahead. So you start doing role playing. You've seen this is a common tactic just for families. How do you and your family, you tell your kids, okay, if we have a fire, we're all going to run to the back porch or something along these lines. So if your freedom cell is spread out through a city or a town, you guys have to decide, if X happens, we're going to respond with Y, and you figure out what variables you have to account for. And maybe in some situations you might want to stay put and just hunker down. In other situations, you are going to want to have to get the heck out, and maybe you have another place, a second place to meet up. So again, you have to think about this and be prepared for the different type of situations you're going to deal with. That's the first step, is getting prepared, thinking ahead. What are the weather emergencies, environmental disasters you're going to face? That's first. Identify those, right? Then second, think about how you would respond to that. Is it going to be a matter of just getting out of your homes, getting out of your neighborhoods, and meeting up somewhere else, having a second meetup location? Or are you going to have the option to stay put? And maybe if you stay put, you stay put for a while. But for example, with the hurricane, if the flooding gets too bad, we would get out of here and we would head somewhere else if that was a possibility. So those are important to start with. Identifying the weather emergencies, and second, identifying if you're going to want to stay put and if you're going to want to stay in one location, and then doing role-playing and preparation, not only in discussions, but practicing. And this is one thing we've talked about that we haven't done in the past, but perhaps you have a day, you set a time and a date. Okay, this Saturday by 1 p.m., all of our group, we act as if a hurricane warning has just taken place and the hurricane's on the way. What do we do in this situation? How do we respond? Well, then you have everybody in your group, you think about this ahead of time, and each person has their specific task that they're doing, and you go about it and just pretend like it's happening. And maybe spend the whole day dealing with this weather emergency, and also maybe you throw in different variables like, hey, the levees just broke, the water is flooding all of these neighborhoods. How are you going to deal with this? So being prepared is always going to be the best strategy for dealing with any situation, especially weather, environmental emergency. So outside of that, though, once you've done this preparation, you've identified what risks you have, you've identified whether you're going to have to leave immediately or if you want to try to stay, and then if you do have to leave a location, having a pre-planned location to rendezvous, and also to talk about what happens if some people aren't able to make that. Maybe you plan to meet somewhere, but then because of flooding or fires or blizzards or whatever, that path is blocked, so some people can't make that. What do you do in that situation? So really trying to think of all the possible scenarios that could come out. And then let's say it's happening, right? So there's a fire going on, there's a hurricane. We had flicker of lights the other night. We might have lost all power, but we haven't so far. Some people go without internet, go without electricity. So you have to consider these things. A few of the tools I'm going to give you now are dependent upon the electricity still being on and upon having internet access and app access. But once again, if that's not the case, then the best goal is to be prepared ahead of time and to have planned beforehand how are we going to respond and deal with these situations. So then if the internet does go out, if the power does go out, you guys already know, okay, let's activate plan no electricity, right? Then you guys go into the phase of what you have in mind. But while you have electricity and while you have access to the internet, first off, charge all your computers, charge your phones so that if something does happen, you have as much signal, as much power as possible. Also, I would recommend getting backup batteries that can be run off solar power, and they have them small, consumer friendly now, and storing them up. These batteries can be stored up so that they have power, and you bust them out. And then, once you get access to sunlight, you can start charging up for more in case the power goes out. Because if it does go out, when this happened here in Houston and other places, it went out for 2 weeks for some people or several days. So, another thing is, let me just, before we move on the preparation thing, is this is why it's good to have backup supply of food to last you at least a week, maybe more than that. I'd say 3 months is really ideal if you want to be way taken care of. But also water, this is one thing we're seeing here with the hurricane. People are just storming the grocery stores, and there's no bread. It's really weird. All the breads are gone, and the crackers, and lots of fruits and produce are gone, and most stores aren't open. There's only a few stores open, and they're not even open all day, and they're only letting certain people in, so it's very restrictive. You can't depend on these systems. This is the importance of decentralization and unplugging and localizing. You can't depend on these systems, so grow as much of your own food as possible. Then when this storm, this fire, etc. is coming, grab as much of that food as you can, bring it inside, or if you got to leave, take it with you. Have some backup food at your place. Now, again, if you got to leave your place, the location you're staying put, at the second location you want to meet, then you want to have food and supplies stored there as well. And maybe even along your path to get out of town, if that's necessary, you bury certain supplies, you bury food, you bury different things. So that's, these are all things to take into consideration, but it's up to you to decide how serious you want to be about this and how, intense you want to be about it. So having the backup supply of food, that's going to be helpful, so that you don't have to go rush out into an emergency to try to fight people at the grocery stores. And we've had some success here in Houston. It hasn't been, at least where we're at, been the worst. We've actually been able to get to the store, and so far we bought groceries last Friday just specifically for this, backup water and everything, and we're still doing good here on Tuesday. We've got a couple more days to get through, and we should be good. Now, you want to make sure, though, that you're prepared as much ahead of time so you don't have to stress this at all. You already know, okay, we've got food put away, we've got clean water, stop buying plastic water bottles. Don't be like all these people going out and spending all this ridiculous amounts of money on these big cases of water bottles. Yes, they're convenient. You can drink one at a time, I guess. But you know what's more convenient for both you and for future generations and for the environment and for everybody is think a little bit ahead. Again, preparedness. Buy a freaking reusable water bottle of some sort, maybe like a Life Straw or a stainless steel one that's got a little clip that you can put on your belt loop or just take with you everywhere, and use that. And then buy these reusable 5-gallon containers that are BPA free, they're poison free, like the plastic you're drinking, most of those water bottles. They found that a lot of times the water in there is just recycled tap water, city water that's got all sorts of crap in it, especially the Houston water. You don't want to drink that. And it's got BPA lining in there. Yeah, some of them aren't, but overall it's plastic still. So it's just, don't support that. Get a reusable bottle for you and your everybody in your Freedom Cell and your family, and buy these refillable, get like 3 to 5 refillable 5-gallon water containers, and there's filling stations all around this country. Some of them are Glacier or Penguin, there's different names for these, but they cost like 10, 15, 20, 30 cents a gallon. It's so much cheaper. It's better. They're filtered like 7 different times. It's not harmful to the environment. Do that. Plan ahead. Put as much of that away as possible. Plus have some extra for drinking on a regular occasion and cooking with, and all these things. So be prepared in that sense. But once you get past all that and you're actually dealing with the situation and the emergency starts taking place, use social media, the power of social media while you have it, to organize and spread information. Obviously, this has been helpful since social media really blew up in the last 10 years. And we're seeing with the hurricane, people are passing around, sharing information, like contact these people, do these things. We're specifically focusing on, along with decentralization, we're not talking about sending people to Red Cross or to the Houston Food Banks or these other nonprofits. You know, some of them have good intentions, but they're also a part of the nonprofit industrial complex, and there's bureaucracy involved, there's stifling, and people, they're not necessarily always accountable, and people don't always get the supplies they need. Instead, we're trying to give either directly to the people that we know within our own communities, or we're working with activist communities, activist groups, anarchist groups, freedom-minded people who are just giving directly to those who need the help. So social media is sometimes a great place for that. Also, as we've talked about in the past, the apps Nextdoor.com can be a great tool for this, to finding out information about what's happening locally, who needs support, who needs help. And again, the Cell 411 app, which is the cells, just like Freedom Cells. You can use this to create cells in your community and use it as an emergency alert system. I'm being bullied, I've been pulled over, etc. Well, obviously you can use it for a weather emergency, and you can start saying, hey, I'm being flooded in, or I just saw somebody on this side of the road. Send out alerts, help each other, mutual aid, come to each other's defense and support, so that we don't need to rely on corporate or state power. Another one is the Waze app, W-A-Z-E, which many of you probably know as a way to kind of a crowd-sourced GPS service that tracks where you're going, so you can use it like a map, but also people will put things on the map that say like, hey, road blocked here, or checkpoint from cops, or what have you. So it's a really awesome way for people to support each other and spread information. And we've been seeing it used here in Houston during the hurricane, where people are blocking off flooded areas and streets that are blocked off and things of that sort. So use the Waze app. Even if you don't have it as an app on your cell phone, the live map on their website is available just straight through the internet. And of course, the Freedom Cells website. This is what we're trying to use the website, freedomcells.org, as a hub that does all of these different things. And you can post in Freedom Cells when you have events, when you have emergencies. You can request support, and it goes out to everybody in the network. I mean, there's just so many different ways that this website and this tool can be utilized, but it's really up to us to do that. And speaking of that, I'm going to be using it more and more, especially now that we're talking about it again, and I've been on the road spreading this idea to everyone. Another thing is the app Zello, which is a walkie-talkie two-way radio app, essentially, and it works instantly. It's supposed to be really helpful, and people have been using this they can create different channels on there. Like there's one called Boaters Houston or Boaters Texas, where people who are stranded, who need help from boaters, can listen into that channel and radio them and say, hey, this is where we're at, because people are having to go around the city because of the floods on boats and rescue people, and so they're using the Zello app to do that. So all those things, social media, Cell 411, Freedom Cells, the Waze app, Zello, all these tools, nextdoor.com. Use them as resources to plug in and to find people in times of emergency to get vital information, so you don't have to rely on the state for getting your information. And maybe supplement your information with some of the city information, local information from the government authorities, but don't rely on them. Now, again, if you have no electricity, all those tools go out. This is the importance of preparing ahead, talking with your Freedom Cell, role-playing, doing these exercises of, as I said, let's have a day, emergency day on. Let's all just go about our days, and at 1 p.m. on this day, a tornado hits. How do we respond, or whatever? Different things like that, and you plan ahead. Okay, when the electricity goes out, we move to Plan B. And just have these things in mind. Really take these steps if you want to be prepared. And again, preparedness comes in all different forms of scenarios. So this is a weather emergency, but we're going to have future videos where I talk about more specific situations and different types of emergencies that Freedom Cells can be useful. That's all I got for you today. Thank you guys for continuing to support my work and the work of the Conscious Resistance. If you find this valuable, please like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page, YouTube, follow us on Twitter. We're also on Instagram at the Conscious Resistance if you want to follow us there. And please do follow, join, get involved at freedomcells.org. We're going to be a lot more active on there as we move into the new year and keep growing this movement about localization, decentralization, unplugging, and creating more freedom in our lives. So thank you guys for continuing to watch and support. Please share this. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.